You've found AHO Radio. We're authentic human outliers coming together to help heal the fear of being authentic. To bring back genuine human conversation. No hype, no sensationalism, just honest talk about the critical issues affecting society, affecting humankind. And now, here are the hosts of AHO Radio, John Krotec and Bill Protzmann.
Okay, good to see you, Bill, out on the West Coast. Here we are for another episode of AHO Radio. We're still trying to figure it out, and we're just glad you're tuning in and you're listening.
Yes, sir. Hey, John. Good morning. It's what are we on? This is Tuesday, the 7th of April or something like that. We're recording this.
Yeah, we're both West Coast guys. Of course, you're California West Coast. I'm Florida West Coast, but 3-hour difference. It's a little bit after 11 here, and just good to see you, man. You know, we're in the middle of this pandemic paradigm shift, and Bill and I have been talking about things like distractions and ghosting and you know, this feeling of being overwhelmed with everything and making things more complex than they need to be. I mean, you kind of feel that way, Bill?
I do. I had to go out for groceries yesterday, and I felt like I was in this fog where the way that I normally am in the world wasn't working, and I just felt like an alien walking around in our, in grocery stores and whatever. It was weird. It was like the normal stuff wasn't there. I wasn't going to touch my cell phone, wearing protective gear, mask, gloves, the whole thing. It just felt like, I don't know, weird.
Well, it was definitely palpable. I did the same thing you did. I went out to 2 grocery stores yesterday, Sam's and then, the local Publix market. And there is that palpable feeling that something's just not right. And, I witnessed, of course, I probably should have worn a mask, but I'm keeping my social distance. But I just saw people, it was almost like, we've heard about the 1,000-yard stare. But this was like the 1,000-yard stare on steroids. People were, it was palpable, man. You could feel the angst and the uncertainty. And is this the way it's supposed to be? Like, are we in the apocalypse? And, you keep hearing stuff all that, honestly, you don't know what to believe anymore.
It's hard to know what to believe. And, the thing that bothered me the most, John, is that you're out there, and like 2 people are coming down a grocery aisle together, right? And you've got to give the 6-foot separation thing. And there were a lot of cases where, if I saw somebody coming, I'd just stop and wait and nod as they went by or whatever. But with everybody wearing a mask, at least in California, you don't get the facial expression. So it's like you can see people's eyes like you're talking, but you cannot see what their mouth is doing. And hopefully there's nothing written on the back of this.
Yeah, like kiss my one,
Exactly. But it felt like that because you wanted to acknowledge people for these little kindnesses that were happening 100 times, but there's no way to do that. Especially when you're like wearing a hat and a mask and whatever. It's like you can barely see your eyes behind the glasses, and it's like it's so surreal that we can't interrelate.
Well, it's true. Well, that now I wonder how those ladies feel in the Middle East, with everything covered up. They're not allowed to self-express, and again, that's a whole other episode. But, the thing that got me was driving around and seeing people wearing a mask with their windows closed up in their vehicles.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, what do they think? They're going to go through like a cloud of coronavirus? I mean, that to me is fear. And total fear. And we all know, we've been told for eons what fear does. Fear stifles you.
Yeah.
It makes you do things that you wouldn't normally do. And if you get fearful in the animal kingdom, if you stop and you stay stuck, chances are you're going to get eaten.
You're going to be, it'll be lunch.
I never forget the Discovery episode of Planet Earth. And, it dawned on me by about the 8th DVD, right? I'm thinking, man, we're going up the food chain, and there's always something bigger that can eat you. You start out with protozoa, then it goes to the next organism, then it goes to something bigger. And I'm thinking, wow, planet Earth is all about the food chain. Who's going to get us next? And so if we as humans stay stuck in this fear because we don't know what to believe or what to do, what the hell are we going to do? Are we just going to go completely immobile and not be able to function? And then they just ram stuff down our throat and know that the proverbial metropolis, here we are, we're there, and, Animal Farm and all this. Is that where we're at? Really?
Have you seen Westworld?
I remember that movie. Oh,
It's
yeah.
on our short list. They've done a remake. So I'm thinking about this really carefully. It's hard to function in a world where there's so many distractions, and I'm finding that my addiction to the flat screen is a very difficult one to break right now. But it's important to have some time away from it. With with all of our social distancing, and we're watching a list of great musicals. There's 20 musicals, and it's going to be it'll take us into next month before we finish them all. But just like all this flat screen, flat screen, flat, I want something that isn't a flat screen right now, and it's hard to bust away from that because we have a distraction habit. You know what I mean? We got to
We
look at our social media. We got to look at check on the email. We got to stay plugged in. We've got Zoom meetings coming up, and it's like, oh no, 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 no more flat screens, please. Just give me something real.
I hear you lean with Charlie. I wrote, how I am. I'm always writing down these quotes or these things that come to my mind. So I'm thinking, think about this. Something you made me just realize, or if we desire a meaningful life, and everybody does, so, why even say it like that? Then why are we constantly beckoned by worthless distractions?
Exactly.
And I'll take it even a step further. And this is what I call this right here, because it's like immediate. I call it engineered bliss. We can be whoever we want. We can have fun. We can show this lifestyle like, we're on top of the world. But think about this. I personally believe, and this is based upon what you and I have been talking about, I personally believe that engineered bliss is an artificial relief from being human. So you have to get real with yourself and quit being distracted by technology and vices, which, by the way, these are engineered to pump up our dopamine and our cortisol, and all the cortisol makes you depressed, but it pumps up an adrenaline level. Then your mind creates this opioid, and it is tough to break away from. So think about this. And I'm throwing the gauntlet down to our listeners. In a world of artificial intelligence, humans, I am genius. And we've forgotten that. Humans have
that's
forgotten.
powerful.
Yeah, I mean, we let the machines do it all.
I get that. I'm all about rules-based stuff. IT background. I can put programs together. And understand code. But the ethics behind that are really interesting. And I think that you're touching that point right now, which is you can let all the rules work, and that's fine. But what about when it takes a human being? What about when it takes creativity? We don't have any rules for compassion yet, and how to make that operate. All of those things that are qualities, our best. When we come with our best is not necessarily a rule set. I mean, there's guidance. We talk about etiquette and chivalry and things like that. There's guidance, right? But at the end of the day, the reason you know the rules is so you can improvise when the rules fail. So the rules tell you all the possible outcomes or all the known outcomes. But I think what you're saying is when it comes to doing coronavirus or whatever the opportunity is, that's where the authentic human comes into play. If you're not ready with that, like if you spent all your life just being part of the rule set, if you're not ready for the authentic moment, what do you do when you get there? I mean, that could be an existential threat.
Well, you vacillate, and it's great points you're making there. I wrote a piece for LinkedIn today, and I call it instinct complacency. The fear of following your gut feeling, the fear of trusting yourself, and all humans have this instinct. It's called intuitive nature, and because we've been reliant on the computers now for the last 30, 40 years, it goes up now. It's exponential. We vacillate. You know, how many times have you woken up in the morning and you know you got a list of stuff to do and you say, well, I'm just going to check my email, or I'm going to go on and I got to do a social media post, or I got to check out this movie or this television thing. And the next thing you know, 2 hours later, you're frantic because the stuff you were trying to get done in the morning didn't get done.
Oh yeah.
And then you vacillate the rest of the day. Well, you know, it's 11 o'clock, you know, I'm never going to get this done. So, you know, oh,
We
gosh.
got to make built-in practices. Like you and I, we have a morning routine. Mine, I know something about yours because I see your accountability all the time, and you know something about mine. But the first thing I do in the morning is whatever time that alarm goes off, I take an hour before I get to technology, and I'll do other activities that are not related to tech that put me squarely in the human moment. You know, make some coffee. Obviously, make some coffee. Um, and there's a ritual around making coffee, so you can include that whole ritual as part of your coming alive in the morning, right? If you're listening to this and you have rituals like that, you know what I mean. But technology is not the one I go to. I mean, I really have to make myself do that because I'm a gearhead, man. I'm
Well, do me a favor, and I know you're good at this. Boot up or look on here. Let's share with our audience. You know what you're talking about. What you're doing is you're doing deep work.
oh yeah,
And
let's look at that.
there's that book out there by Cal Newport. He's a PhD guy out of New England area, but it's called Deep Work, and he talks about taking this, you know, digital sabbatical. You can do it for extended days at a time. You can do it for the one day. You know, I'm only going to do social stuff or technology for an hour. But what he's found out and what the studies have shown is the more that we can do what we're talking about, you know, budget our time, which is very valuable, which some people say doesn't really exist. But if we can balance that, then we can create a more of a fulfilling, here you go, that book right there. That is a really good book. Cal Newport. Yep. Thanks for sharing that, because there's, you know, if we could get back to something like this and make ourselves accountable, I think we'll have a lot less frustration in our day-to-day life, and with a lot less frustration, we'll raise the aura of positivity, and you know, and get a lot more accomplished in our day-to-day lives. And sometimes there's days we don't need to do anything. So
Let's break this down because I love how this book has affected me, and I know that you've read it as well. One of the things that's really cool about deep work is one of the things that John and I just mentioned. Now, Cal Newport doesn't bring this up, but the idea of accountability is really important. And one of the things that you can do if you're socially distant right now is find a partner and become an accountability partner to that person. So what that means for John and for me is that every day we exchange our accountability. We list the top 5 things we're going to do the next day and send that off via email. And at the end of the day, we also follow up and say, these are the things I did. Like out of those top 5, looks like I did 3 of them and 2 of them are still pending. And it's a discipline, it's a practice, but it's also a good habit. And when you have that kind of exchange going with someone else, it just puts you in a frame of reference, and not that you're gonna, you know, you're not gonna bust my chops if I don't do something, John. You know, it's like, but we're gonna notice that, and that puts you in a place where you can say, hey, you know, hey buddy, how's it going on this thing? I know it's been on your list for a while. What's blocking you? Is there anything that we can, like, you know, you want to unpack that and work through it? Or you can just say, hey, dude, you're really hitting the ball in the park. Let's keep doing this. This is good stuff. And just that simple little practice is such an important way of disconnecting from the distractions and staying in the lane. Just a tiny way of doing it. It works, man. It's working for me.
and it builds. You know, one thing that you said, you know, accountability, but you know, the personal accountability and the ability for you to be able to forgive yourself if you don't get all the things done. Because
Yeah.
what we tend to do is we make this list and with all the good intentions, and then something comes up, like I just said, we spent too much time doing this, and then we don't get to the things we know we really need to, that we desire to do, and then we beat ourselves up, and then it's just like, you know, what's the use?
Yeah.
And so
Don't beat
yeah,
up. You know, I stop before the beat up.
stop before the beat up. And you know, and there is there 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 is that personal accountability and personal forgiveness that goes along with that, because you know, we've been and we talk about the culture, but our culture's been, you got to go, and you got to do this, do this, do this, do this. We got to climb the ladder. We got to do this, do this. And it just gets to the point to where we're constantly going. We're not taking a deep breath. We're not sitting down. We're not, taking into account all these things that are going on. And then we talk about the ghosting. I was thinking about, is ghosting a character issue? Or is it an issue of being too overwhelmed and just you don't want to deal with it? And there's a difference there, because I think most people, I honestly believe this with all of my heart and soul, most people desire to return a text or an email. I just believe they do. But I think that all of us are so overwhelmed at times, we just don't even want to deal with it. And thus begins this concept of ghosting. It probably started out in dating first. That's where the foundation got started, and then it morphed into this global, I don't want to use the word pandemic, but it's everywhere these days. Ghosting seems to be a norm in business. And holy cow, I even think to myself, how does business even get done if somebody can't even answer a simple email? Think about that. So the next time somebody sends you an email or you meet somebody, and I've been guilty of it at times too, but think about what's going on and why you're not responding, or why that person may not be responding to you. And open communication is the best thing for a successful relationship, or to actually build a relationship. I ought to know, because at times in my marriage, my communication was not that good, and it bit me in the rear end more than once. So ghosting is an issue.
I love the anti-ghosting advice in deep work. Even Cal Newport talks about it, and he has colleagues that they've just sort of disappeared. They don't even publish an email. And I'm reminded of this all the time. So we watched My Fair Lady last night, and there's a place where Professor Higgins is invited to do something, and it's the third time, and he tells his secretary or somebody, just ignore it. So there's a place for that in the world where it's, it's the right thing to do. I have to say this the wrong way, but it's the right thing to do to ignore something that's just pestering you. And you all know where that threshold is for yourself. I mean, we ignore spam. I mean, there's a pretty good threshold right there. But when somebody that you're working with doesn't get back to you, and you've had some sort of weeks or months kind of conversation with this person, they just sort of disappear, that doesn't serve anybody. And like you, John, I believe that there's probably, they didn't mean to do that. People are better than that, generally speaking. But what if it's tied to distraction? There's just so much overwhelming stuff that your thing, whatever it is, falls off the tail, and you don't get the attention. And then we're in that squeaky wheel paradigm again, where if you squeak harder, you might get some response. But if what you want to do is forward focused and authentic, squeaking isn't going to solve the problem. Because what do you want to be known as, an authentic squeaker? That just doesn't make any sense to me.
No, and that's what normally happens. People get driven to that, back to the LinkedIn article about complacent instincts, the practice of not doing anything and vacillating, so we got this built-in sensing human mechanism, and something comes across our table or throughout the day, and it's something that you don't need to ask for a second opinion, or it's something that you can do right then and there. What needs to be done, and you don't do it. And so you get more and more frustrated. And even worse, you could have multiple failures throughout your life, throughout the day, throughout the week, if you continue not to trust your gut feeling. And trusting your gut feeling means really just trusting your own instincts. And I started thinking when I wrote the piece, why don't we trust our own instincts? And I think it's deep. I mean, and we're not going to get into a psychological eval here, but I think it boils back down to self-esteem. And if you don't trust yourself, means you probably have low self-esteem. I know I've been there, times when I haven't trusted myself and made a decision when I should have, that things don't get done. So continued frustration, you don't meet your objectives. And so if you can just start to break through that fear threshold and make a decision the only thing you're going to do is you're going to give yourself more confidence. And as your confidence builds, these things are going to become second nature because you're going to tap into who you are. And then the desires of your life, personally, maybe business, and even spiritually, will start to happen for you. So, we're talking about a lot of subjects, but,
Oh yeah.
distraction, deep work, technology, ghosting, trusting your gut instincts. It's all about, it's why Bill and I are having these discussions on AHO Radio, authentic human outliers. It's all about finding ways to be you, to be authentic, and to find ways to interact that make your life more fulfilled. I don't know. It's deep. This is
Yeah.
deep work.
Well, we got to say this for the record because I think it's important to recognize it. If your self-worth comes from social media, that's a problem. If your self-worth comes from a very deep place inside your heart where you know who you are and you're able to inhabit that, that's a completely different thing. And somewhere on that giant spectrum is where we all fall. And we all fall in different places depending upon what's going on at that moment in our life, too. Like if you're running an ad campaign and it's important for you to drive business, social media is pretty important. But if you're tying your individual sense of purpose and worth into whether or not your Facebook ad campaign is cranking the register, uh, that's a difficult place to navigate, right? It's easy to post a whole bunch of photos like people who do selfies 500 times a day. Okay, well, that's one side of the spectrum. And the business who's looking for a successful ad campaign through Facebook ads or whatever, that's a different part of a spectrum. But the people themselves, the individual human beings, the authentic individual people that we are, whether they're behind a Facebook ad campaign or behind serial selfies, that's what we're talking about. That's the authentic part. That's where we want to find. And you have to peel away all this stuff. You have to peel away the ad campaign to get to the business person behind it that's actually running it and find out what's happening there. And same with the serial selfie people. You got to peel that away and get behind that and figure out who's actually behind all of that stuff. Who's the person behind all that stuff? This is hard. This is deep work. This is
Well,
where it really comes home.
yeah, and now take it a step further, with business and the things that you just described, Bill. This drive for wealth and success and money and riches and Lamborghinis. No offense to Lamborghinis, it's a very sexy car, but all these. Imagine this. So it's this drive, and I got to get to the top, to get this mound of $100 bills, and imagine if the drive or the desire was something more sacred. Imagine if you hungered for serenity, or you hungered for peace, or you hungered for a better relationship with your spouse, or you hungered for a better relationship with your neighbors, or you hungered for a job that you've really been thinking about. Imagine if you hungered for authenticity, and your hunger pangs were not just for money and wealth and fame. Do you think that the world would elevate? And you think that there would be more of a positive aura around you? And then all of those things, wealth and fame, however you decide what that is for you. Imagine if you were in a job field or in a profession that truly was a direct reflection of who you are. If you were working in a job that made you feel authentic, do you think you'd have less frustration? Well, maybe not. The world's kind of frustrating, but I'd say you probably could sleep better at night. But imagine that. Imagine if we hungered for something sacred inside each of us. Imagine that. It's a question that we'll throw out there. So,
Yeah, I'm
yeah, I
not going
mean,
to answer that, but both John and I are in the business of supporting people who want to answer that question. So if that's you, here we are, right?
Yeah, I mean,
You're
let's
not
talk
alone.
about let's tell the world your story, and that's what the authentic human outliers is all about. Is we want to have this platform using technical tools, which we love, and we're very blessed to have them. We're so grateful, but we want to utilize them in a way that maybe it's not the proverbial status quo, the way you see everybody. I mean, after a while, there's only so many pictures of sandwiches you can look at. There's only so many online programs that you can join to do, and masterminds and all these cool things. But you got to figure out what really resonates. And if you love just, taking pictures of your sandwich or what you're doing, and I'm being facetious, obviously, but if that's the way your life is fulfilled, then power to you. You have found it. But I would venture to say that if you're spending time telling the world how great your life is all of the time, which we know is total bullshit, nobody's world is like that all the time, then there's something, like Bill pointed out, there's something inside that's not gelling. And people eventually can see that. You may have a real awesome following right off the bat, the new kid on the block. But after a while, people are going to see that there's a certain, perhaps, emptiness there without passing judgment. I don't know. I see it all the time, and I occasionally probably have fallen into it myself. And then I start wondering, what the hell am I doing? Who cares if I'm driving my car down the freeway when everybody else is on lockdown? I mean, it's just, I don't know. I don't want to beat up social media because, we've used social media. But at the same time, why are we so distracted all the time and can't seem to get things done?
So you use the word judgment. I like the word discernment.
Yeah.
I This is something that I've been struggling with for a long time because, I grew up in the Christian tradition, and judgment is one of those loaded words. You got to be careful when you use it because people will quote things at you and, explain why you're wrong to be judging. So discernment. Discernment's difficult because you've got to be able to evaluate what's real. And you can't go to, Google and ask the question. Discernment involves what's going on up here, but it also involves what's happening here. And some people would say, in addition to the head and the heart, you also have discernment in your gut. And we're talking about gut feelings here. I think it's possible to know immediately. You really get it in that first few moments. Like, I've never done this, but the speed dating things, you see this in the movies and all over the place, where you've got like a minute across the table and then you shift. Everybody keeps changing around the room. I think within that first few seconds is when you know. And yeah, okay, I hear elevator pitch, blah, 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 all of that. But before you even open your mouth in the elevator, the person who you're talking to is forming they're discerning you. And if they're good at it, they're going to read you right. If you're coming across authentically, they're going to read you right before you even open your mouth. And if they're not good at it, they're going to wait for your elevator pitch, and they're going to use the rule set to determine whether or not it's something that they should take back to their flat screen and evaluate. But it's that moment of that first moment, the authentic moment that happens before anybody says anything, where the connection begins. That's where discernment can happen. And if you're good at that and you've built that skill, blessings, because you're going to cut through a lot of crap in your life, and you won't be distracted, and you'll be able to focus in on the deep work when you need to, and then allow yourself to just be free and let the distractions lead you when that time comes. But it all starts, like you said, John. It all starts with the gut. What's your gut feeling? That's where it really matters.
That's where it really matters, and you're so correct on that, Bill. And I think I'm going to throw another concept in here because we want people to think. We want to provoke people to use the gray matter. Flow state. Flow state is when you're in touch with that instinctual nature that you've been blessed with by the universe. And so I got a question to throw out there. We get into these comfort zones, right? And my question is this: are you comfortable in your comfort zone, or are you uncomfortable? And we talk about the gut feeling. You know, you might think that you're on top of the world and, oh, you've reached your flow state. But if you're uncomfortable, you have to really search deep inside, deep work, and ask yourself why. Why is everything uncomfortable when I feel like I'm in this comfort zone? And it's a paradox, because I meet a lot of people that you think really have it together. And when you get to them in depth in a discussion, you find out they're really not all that happy. So back to the foundation again of authenticity and what that really means. You know, I have a really good friend that talks about the lemmings following the lemmings. He goes, he doesn't even do social media anymore because I'm done with it. He said, I did it for 6 years. He said, and all I see is the same stuff over and over and over again. It's the lemmings, the followers following the followers, and everybody's trying to outdo everybody else. And you know, and I don't want to be rude here, but my gosh, how many times have you had in some of these platforms, you know, join my group? How many groups can you join? It's kind of like having friends, you know, oh, I got 6,000 friends. I mean, seriously, you've got 6,000 friends. I can tell you straight up, Bill, I can count on two hands probably how many real friends I have. And this is no slight to any of my business acquaintances or anybody I know, but somebody that could, you know, I might have more than that because, you know, we're in the military circles because, you know, that's a brother and sisterhood. But my point is that really, you've got all those friends and you want to be in all these groups. I mean, if you're in more than 3 groups, maybe even 2, we talk about distractions, then maybe you need to consider what your priorities are. Because I've looked at the groups and, you know, if you're in 20 groups and you don't say anything to any of them, and I'm probably guilty of that. I'm not in 20 groups, no, but I'm being facetious. But then what are you really adding? What's the value? And our good friend Adam Cummings, who's also with us on the AHO Radio initiative, he talks about what value are you truly adding to the conversation, or are you just being noisy? Are you just adding more noise? And the more noise you have, the more we get distracted. So I'm really starting at 60 years old. I'm starting to look at everything I say as, you know, what's the value of what I'm saying or what I'm doing? Is this really of great value? Why am I doing this? Well, you know, it could be something as simple as raking leaves away from your air conditioner. You know, if you let them pile up, you might say it has no value, but if you let them pile up, you know, your AC goes on the fritz, and the next thing you know, you're replacing it. But the things that we do in our lives, what's the value?
I love to look at on a results basis. And when the law of attraction came my way, which law of attraction has been out there a long, long time, but when it came my way, I looked around and thought, hey, you know, if the law of attraction is true, and you do actually get what you want, look at where we are. And law of attraction hit me just before what they call the Great Recession in 2008. And I was thinking to myself, man, this is what we've attracted? We've attracted our way into a mortgage bubble where everything is artificially worth more than we actually know it is. And everything else that goes along with that, and the whole situation with the economy. And then, you know, 2008 came and went, and we had some new presidents in the United States, and things shifted a little bit. And then I looked around and said, okay, now what's the law of attraction feel like now? I mean, this is what we've got now. This is what we've attracted now. And things like racism and sexism and the suicide exploded, and just all this crazy happened. And we had all these veterans coming back from the conflicts with post-traumatic stress and traumatic brain injury, and just, I mean, it's crazy in the world. Climate change became a big issue on the radar. This is what we're attracting, people. This is our collective law of attraction at work. And you might say, oh, I have nothing to do with climate change. That isn't me. But here's the point. In some very small way, yes, it is. All of what we're getting is because this is what we've attracted. If you believe the law of attraction, I guess maybe we could say that coronavirus is something we've attracted. Isn't that weird? But you know, our results are based upon what we want, and what we've wanted for a long time hasn't really given us hasn't given us the contentment that we seek, and yet we're feeding it with flat screens and everything else. So you want to say something about that? I know.
No, 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 no. I mean, I'm listening. I think that what we're seeing now, this is just obviously just my own personal belief, is that we are seeing what we attracted with globalism. And this is, of course, people are gonna disagree, but it's okay because the truth's out there somewhere, right? Remember the X-Files?
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
we wanted inexpensive prices. Okay. This is not just in America. This is really in the industrial countries. And so we looked for cheap labor to create products. And so we went to these places. And what we did in this globalist mindset is we created the people at the top became wealthier. We flooded global markets with cheap product. We took away the manufacturing base of the industrial giants, not just in America, but in Europe, Western Europe, Europe in general. And then we created this slave population of these low wage earners. We decimated the middle class, not just in America, but globally. And then we created a situation where because the supply lines are secure. Remember the old saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Well, some countries put all their eggs in one basket. And you cannot, if you're not in charge of your supply lines, which we're starting to see right now, then you really put not only your national security at risk, but you put your population at risk. And then you put global health at risk when you're dealing with countries that have poor social hygiene standards, I guess. So we've been warned about a pandemic for a long time now. This is not, I guess I've heard it's every 75 100 years, but here, all it takes, and look at this thing, look at the map, you see the red dots everywhere, these red bubbles. That's from human contact, and that started somewhere. And I'm not here to castigate. Well, all I can say is this, and this is law of attraction. Yes, the human race has attracted what we're going through right now. But there's reasons for that, and we all have to be accountable for that.
Oh, that's the point. Yes, there's
Yeah,
you can't hide and say no, I didn't do that. Uh, Collectively, it's like a unit. It's like a military unit. You can only go as fast as the slowest person in the unit. So you
yeah,
train and you drill and you make sure that you're all able to go at a speed that's going to get the job done. And we've abdicated our training in many ways. We meaning like collectively humanity. We're not caring for the slowest among us and helping them run at least a little bit faster. And by doing that and by measuring success in terms of how much is in our bank accounts, uh, we've we've sort of shot ourselves in the foot because only a very few are able to be that successful, and even they feel empty, or some of them do. I'm not going to speak for all of them. Some of them feel empty. I imagine Bill Gates and Melinda Gates are feeling pretty good right now, even though you've seen that video. If you haven't, go find it. It's Bill Gates with, oh, come on, thank Bill. The guy from the Today Show. I can't think of it right now. But anyway, here's the point. So Bill and Melinda's Foundation are going to fund billions of research facilities. They're going to throw 7 different research facilities a bunch of money in the hopes that they're going to find a way around the COVID-19 virus. And they know doing this that probably only 2 of them are going to succeed. But he actually says this. It's Noah. Noah is at Webster. He actually says, look, we're going to do this, and we know we're going to waste a bunch of money, but we're going to be further ahead on the successful ones than if we waited around for somebody else to do it. And the implication there, which Noah follows up, is like, you mean the feds? And Bill Gates is like, yeah, we can move faster than the federal government. And in a world where a billionaire can move faster than the federal government to solve a worldwide problem, what does that say about the federal government of any country right now? When individuals are able to do stuff like Jack Ma sending a bunch of masks because the federal government wasn't able to procure them, and Apple doing what it can do because the government isn't able to move that fast. Folks, this is the government that we all are relying on here in America and in other places in the world, and it wasn't ready. It got distracted. It wasn't doing deep work. It was not in the what's best for everyone lane. It was in the what's best for the most. How can we serve the 80%, forgetting about the 20% that need your help the most? That's not That's not working out. But that's where our law of attraction is right now, people. And we need to change that. We need to work to make sure that it's not about, how much money is in your bank account. It's about who's on your team and are they moving with you and how can you help them move faster. That's readiness.
Yeah, you go to isms, capitalism, globalism, tribalism, communism, socialism. They're all isms, right? They're all systems of human interaction, basically, in forms of government in one way or another. Governments came about because as populations start to grow, you started out in the tribe, all you had to worry about was your little area of operations. Then it gets bigger, then you build cities. And so people needed forms and systems of government. I don't think that any system of government, whether it's tribalism or globalism, is the absolute. And what happens is in some of these systems is that you're always going to have people that work and you're going to have people that don't work. And some of those people that don't work may have a legitimate reason for that. But what I've seen in the history that I've read, that in like socialism and communism, which in theory sound awesome, but in practicality and reality, they don't work. Then you have the flip side of capitalism, which is kind of cool because you can kind of be whatever you want and you can get rewarded for how hard you work. But then you tend to forget where you come from. So in any population or in any community of people or society, you have to have some type of mechanism in place. Maybe it's based on law and order, needs to be, but you have to have some type of system in place. So what system does a society choose? And there's no doubt as a small business owner, I could get stuff done like that. I could call somebody up on the phone, and I used to compare it to corporate bureaucracy. Well, they can't put a new product line in because they've got so many tiers of checks and balances. But hey, I own my own store. I can make a decision. I can have that product on my shelf in 2 weeks. Of course, it's a simplified thought. So in a country of 300 million people or 30 million or billions as in China, what system do you employ that works for everybody? And the answer is there is no answer because
Yeah.
I personally think that it's survival somewhat. But also, I heard a quote the other day, when the end of the world comes, the only thing that's going to be left are the computers and the cockroaches, and they're going to have to duke it out for control. So, but if you look at the meaning of that, it's deeper than that. Cockroaches. Now, when you think of a cockroach, what do you think of humanly? And when you think of this techno, so I don't want to run off, but I mean, what system works the best? Everybody's got their own opinion. It's great that Bill Gates is going to do that because, it's great. What would you do with $10 billion right now? What would you do right now, Bill? If you had $10 billion, you think you could affect the planet?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's so many ways you could help with resources like that. Yeah.
And think about if there was a collective net of AHOs around the world, authentic human outliers, that operated inside their circle with integrity and with real social motive, if you will. Imagine what a system like that could do.
I'll put this up here because I managed to find out it's Trevor Noah on The Daily Show, people. And of course, you're just seeing a white screen because the internet is what it is. So look for that. YouTube, it's Bill Gates, Trevor Noah on The Daily Show. Back in February, they were talking about this. Thank you for enduring my lousy memory, people. I appreciate it.
No, it's good. So, you raised some good points, though. What system of government, which is basically management of a society, is the best?
Oh my gosh! So you want to start a new podcast channel for this?
No. I mean, and that we want people on here to discuss that. We want to hear authentic views, and it would be great to have some of those folks on here talking to us about their answers to questions like that, because people really want to be part of something greater than themselves, most people, and the only way we're going to find that or be able to answer these questions is to be able to communicate in a civil, unsensationalistic way which is a whole other story or show, why sensationalism sells. And we can go there at another time. But, so I guess what we're trying to say is, what's real, what's authentic, why are we so distracted, and how can we be who we need to be to live a fulfilled life?
I can see this happening in a global way right now, which is really exciting in the middle of this pandemic. So what COVID is doing is giving us a mirror for how we see ourselves collectively, not individually, but collectively as a people. And there's this huge controversy brewing right now about whether or not Trump's press conferences should be carried live. And I think NPR Seattle is not doing that. The New York Times has stopped carrying his stuff live. And however you come down on Trump, the interesting thing is that there are people emerging at the local level who are amazing leaders. Here in San Diego County, we have some of the most incredible people who can stand up in front of an audience and say, this is how it is, and it's not sensational, it's just the facts. And they seem credible and trustable. And I love the fact that around the nation right now in the United States, and probably happening in other countries as well, it's local communities where these leaders are emerging. And we're starting to know who our mayors are, and who our supervisors are, and who's running the show at the county level or the city level. And this is encouraging to me, being a libertarian, because I love to see local communities starting to take initiative and saying, yes, this is what works for us. This is what we have to do to help the least fortunate. This is what the most fortunate can do to help, and starting to make those connections on the local level. That's really exciting for me. So who cares what's happening? I'm not going to blame anything. It's not what it's about. Let's look and see what's happening in our own backyards, in our own neighborhoods, and the amazing stuff that's happening there. That's the exciting thing for me right now, because that's authentic. That's what's real. That's what matters.
Well, both sides really play the blame game. And basically, when you start to play the blame game, we've talked about this once or twice, the casualty is responsibility. And so no one side is entitled to the absolute. We'll talk about absolutes, and somehow what I think has happened along the line, I don't know when or where, I'm sure there's scholarship out there. We'd love to have one of those people on here. The news quit being the news, because I got to tell you, the office of the presidency, I've studied it quite a bit, Grant and Lincoln and all the way back to the founding fathers. And there's a general lack of decorum that I see. I would never think as a writer to say some of the things that I've said to this president to his face. And then as the president of the United States, I would probably want to act more stately at times. So what I'm doing is I'm calling out both sides. There's an etiquette and there's a decorum that I don't see coming from either side. And honestly, when you start to see that, you tune them out.
Yeah,
I think
the instinct takes over. It's like, no,
the instinct takes over, the gut feeling, and some of those
distraction.
Yeah, some of the 3-letter broadcast firms that I used to love, I don't listen to any of them anymore. And I even, and again, you could say whether or not the president's doing a good job or not. The bottom line is he's the president of the United States, and I think he's doing the best he can. I mean, in my lifetime, we've never been through a global pandemic.
No.
But at the same time, as the president of the United States, there's a decorum that needs to be exhibited. And I think that if that decorum, his personality obvious, to get to be the president of the United States, you have to have done something right somewhere. I don't think you just get that office. If people voted for him, and he may not have won the popular vote, but he won a lot of counties, and that's why the Electoral College is there, and we can debate that till the cows come home. But all I would like to say is I'd like to see more decorum from the office of the presidency. Donald Trump, President Trump, and he's probably, who is this guy? But I'd like to see that, because there's so many fine examples throughout our history of presidents that were probably pretty pissed at times, but they were able to show a different type of decorum. And then the press, I got to tell you, I don't have a genius IQ, but I've heard some of the most ridiculous questions. And I wonder, did they really want an answer to that question, or was it posturing for some political motive? You know what I mean? The bottom line is people are sick and dying. We're in America, but we're also in a global community. And how can we really work together to get through what everybody's facing right now, which is a lot of fear and a lot of uncertainty. And, you know, if you're in a position of what you just talked about, Bill, in a position of authority, these great leaders rising to the occasion at the local level, then damn it, show some decorum and show a lack of, or show some control in a time when that's what people are looking for.
Yeah,
You
we
know,
need the confidence and whatever a leader can impart to. I almost said their troops. Whatever a leader can impart to the people whose job it is to follow, that leadership had better be solid.
and you know, and everybody's got an opinion. You know, we've heard that. What is the saying, Bill? What do they say about opinions? Everybody's got them, that and something else. So you're entitled to your opinion. You're allowed to, AHO, right? But
Yeah.
you're entitled to that opinion. You know, my opinion is some are smellier than others. You know, so let's find a way to be American. Americans have always risen up. I mean, my gosh, we're not perfect in any sense of the imagination, but we've always managed to overcome, and we've always managed to do it together. And
Yes, that's it, right? So together is happening. Even though we're isolated, it somehow together is happening. The fundamental, you know?
we can do it, you know. So it's been great. You know, don't be distracted. Thinking about what really is important to you. If making that phone call to that person you haven't talked to, or taking that soup down the road to your neighbor who you know is not feeling, whatever it is, do what you know is right in your heart.
Yeah, trust your gut. There's
Trust
good
your gut.
information there. There's great information there.
I mean, my wife has been scared silly with it. I don't know how your wife is doing, but mine is scared.
Oh man, my gut is like, this is not a great place, you know. I'm uneasy and anxious and worried, and I think this may be the final shot here, John, but aren't we most authentic when we're most real? And if we're feeling scared and anxious and worried, you know, that's real. That's real. That's Bill today. And we need that tension to propel us to the next thing. Like that's fuel for us.
So to feed off of that, so be scared, but be real. Trust your gut. Do what's right. Use some common sense. Don't listen to what everybody else is saying, especially if you're feeling frustrated by it. Do what you think you need to do and reach out and help somebody. And by doing that, you're going to make the world a better place. I'm just blessed to be here. You know, maybe next time I'll wear a mask, you know, I said, but it's all good. When I go out, for sure I will. But I just wish everybody out there that's listening, first of all, thank you for listening to Bill and I talk about these things that mean a lot to so many people. And stay safe, be well, and Godspeed.
Amen, brother. AHO.
AHO.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of AHO Radio. Information we mentioned is probably in the show notes, but if we missed anything, please let us know and we'll get it added for you. Subscribe to the AHO Radio channel on YouTube to stay connected, and, as always, we wish you health, success, and significance. AHO!